Hello everybody, welcome to another video. The topic of today's video will be e-waste. Everything related to e-waste. So what is e-waste? Well, e-waste is anything that is electronic, hence the name e-waste. Particularly when it comes to computers. All of the stuff that I've got here relates to computers. So there's a lot of stuff in here that is good for us that do scrapping. But on the other hand, when it comes to e-waste, I'm divided. I'm 50-50 when it comes to e-waste. Although I'll still take it, I will accept it. But then there are other parts that I don't really know what to do with them. In fact, I'm still researching on what to do with some of these items that are e-waste. So today I decided to make a video about e-waste and delve a little bit into it. But before that, coffee is priority, like always. Okay, so what is e-waste? E-waste is anything that's electronic that is no longer being used, and that can be anything. It can be phones, it can be computers, it can be, you know, small house appliances like toasters, fans, you name it. But in this particular case, computers are a very good source of things like aluminium, copper, brass. Nowadays, not so much brass. Computers back in the day used to have a lot of brass. Nowadays, not so much. And then it has other things like silver and gold and other metals. Like for example, I've got this motherboard here, and this motherboard is what you could call a high grade because it has a lot of gold. In here, this is where the CPU goes, and this is full of gold pins. So you got some gold here, you got a few other gold connectors here and there. So this is high grade. And then there is other things like, I don't know what these are called, I just call them modem cards or whatever this is called. And there's a few chips in here, and then there's also more gold. These are gold terminals. And here's another one. They basically all have gold in them. And then they have other metals, you know, weird names, you know, palladium. They also have harmful stuff in them. They have dangerous components in them. But they have a lot of gold, and they have a lot of silver, some palladium, and other types of metal. This is good for someone that does recycling. All these boards. And then there's other things like the CPUs. Now these processors here are full of gold. Like got this one here, and then there's another one. But here's the thing. These are not solid gold. These are gold plated. So this is why I say that I'm a bit divided on the issue of e-waste. Because although it has all these precious metals, what you have to do is, in order for you to extract them, it's a dangerous and costly process that most likely for the average person that does scrapping, someone like me for example, or others, it's really not worth it. Not unless you have boxes of this stuff. I have about 6 boxes of this, you know, e-waste, that I cannot really do much with it. And then there's other things like keyboards. Now all keyboards have silver in them, but then again it's not much, but there is some silver. But then there are other things like hard drives. The good thing about hard drives is that they are aluminium. The shell is completely made out of aluminium. And then these discs, you know, these discs here that look like a mirror, There's a reason why they are like this. Is because they have to be completely smooth, and this is where the information is written. So a hard drive is mounted on the case, and there's a few other components here and there holding it in, and this is where the information is stored. As it turns out, this is aluminium as well. So guess what I'm going to be doing with this? I'm going to melt it. So this is aluminium. Sometimes the cover is aluminium, some of the times it's not. Sometimes it's steel or galvanized steel, and it's no good to melt. But sometimes it's aluminium. So hard drives, e-waste. Hard drives are a very good source of aluminium. I have a whole bunch of these, about 30 of them. And then there are other components like this. This is what is called a heat sink. So these heat sinks go on top of some components. The components on a computer that tend to overheat, or they tend to get very hot, they use these heat sinks because aluminium is very good to dissipate the heat. So this here is a block of solid aluminium. And then you might get really lucky and you might find this. This is also a heat sink, but it's made out of copper. This is solid copper. It's heavy. And this was on a motherboard. And then there's a few other bits and pieces that you get that you can get. But when it comes to e-waste in this country, there's not a lot of people that take this sort of waste and recycle it. Scrapyards, for the most part, don't want this stuff because it's too costly. It's too costly to process this stuff, to depopulate all of the precious metals out of them, and then recycle everything else. It's just too costly. And then, who remembers these dodgy old things? Eh? Floppy disks. People would use them back in the day until USBs came along. So these are now obsolete. Nobody uses them anymore. It's actually kind of funny how I got all this stuff. I have about 6 crates like this. And it was actually my landlord that gave me all this stuff. Because as it turns out, I know this man for about 8 years. And as it turns out, back in the day, he used to have a computer shop. And business was good until the time of 2006, 2007, when Apple started to come out with all of their products. And then from that moment onwards, business went bad. And then it came to a point where he wasn't even fixing computers anymore. And then eventually he had to shut down the shop. Because now all of this stuff is obsolete. All of this technology here is outdated. Although you can still have it, you can still use a big desktop tower computer. You can use that if you do some gaming or things of that nature. But if not, then there's really no point for you to have this old stuff, because it's all outdated. Because Apple, their products are a lot more compact. Even though they have all of this stuff, it's a lot more compacted. And then there's other things like power units. This came from a tower desktop computer, and it's very heavy. It has a lot of aluminium in there, and it has a lot of copper. But like everything else, is now obsolete. It's no good anymore. And then there's one here that never left the box. And then there's other things like speakers. This is basically all the stuff that he couldn't sell anymore. It just ended up in the shop. Nobody would buy it anymore. And this is all the stuff that he couldn't sell anymore, because now nobody wants it. He had all this stuff in a storage unit, and now he needs to make space for other things. and he knows that I do scrapping and that I do metal smelting. And he asked me about this stuff, if I wanted it, because it was just taking up space. And yeah, sure, I'll have it. So e-waste is a very good source of precious metals. You have big chunks of aluminium, like in case of hard drives, heat sinks, and power units, and a few other bits and pieces. But then, when it comes to things like this, then you're really stuck. You're really stuck with it, and you might not know what to do with it. If you don't have the means to process all of the precious metals out of this, then you're really stuck with this. There's a few ways to deal with this sort of waste. One way is by using dangerous chemicals, or several types of acid to dissolve everything. And then there are other chemicals that are used to precipitate the gold and the silver and the other metals out, so that you can then extract them and then you can either make more stuff like this, or you can use it for, you know, collectibles, or things like jewelry, or things like coins and bars. It was actually today I was watching some videos about e-waste, and as it turns out, the Royal Mint of this country, they are thinking about either that or they are already doing it, whichever way. They want to take things like e-waste and extract the precious metals out of it so that they can make coins and bars for the Royal Mint, you know, make collectibles. But they have the means, obviously. But someone that does this on a small scale, you know, scrapping, most of us don't have the means to do it. So I'm between 50-50 when it comes to e-waste. Although I'll still take it, but then I will take it because of parts like this, big parts like this that I'm able to melt down and turn them into ingots. But then on the other hand, I got stuff like this. I'm stuck with it now. I could sell it to someone online, I guess. There are people that buy e-waste, but they're very, very few people that buy it, and they're very few and far between. But don't get me wrong, e-waste is a very good source of precious metals. Lately, I've been finding a lot of computers also. Apart from the stuff that I already have, I've been finding computers all over the place. And obviously, because sometimes it depends. Sometimes they might have the hard drive, sometimes they don't have it. In most cases they do. But it's understandable because the hard drives is where people's personal data is. So I understand that they take it. But everything else, things like heat sinks and power units, they are always there. But then when it comes to things like this, things that have a lot of gold, well, not really gold, I mean they are gold plated. These pins are not solid gold, they are gold plated. But again, if you have the means to refine all of this gold and extract it, then by all means. If not, then you're like me, you're stuck with this stuff. But regardless of all of that, e-waste is a very good source of precious metals. Whenever I see a computer out there on the side of the road, I just take it, obviously. Simply because it has all this stuff that I need. But then on the flip side, I'm stuck with this type of e-waste, which I can't really do anything with. So you extract all the parts that you want out of here, and then everything else you're basically stuck with it. But independently of that, e-waste is very good. It's very good for us that do scrapping. This is also a bit of a funny issue that I have a feeling that not a lot of people want to address, is the issue of e-waste. Every year, tons upon tons of e-waste is produced. A lot of that ends up on the landfill, and about 20%, now I'm giving you the numbers, you know, the statistics for this country, you know, the UK, and only 20% of that is processed and recycled. Everything else goes to a landfill, and that's bad. But anyway, that's it when it comes to e-waste. That's my take on it. It's a very good source of precious metals, but then the downside to this is that when you can no longer salvage all the other stuff, you're basically stuck with it until you can figure out what to do with it. But whatever you do, please don't do fly tipping. You know, I always say that, don't do fly tipping, don't dump it on the side of the road. Find out, do some research online and find out who wants this stuff, because believe it or not, there's some people out there that do take it, you know. So if you want to dispose of it responsibly. That's what you should do. So that's, in essence, that's pretty much it for this video. If I missed something, please let me know in the comments. Like if you must, share, and that's it for this video. Everybody, thank you for watching.